Okay, we are going to be starting chapter 4 in your book on page 74. This is going to be talking about layers. So you're going to get to learn how to use layers here in Photoshop. If you can see over here in your layers panel, you actually have 5 layers in this document already, but you're only seeing one of those, or 2 of those, I guess. So you're seeing the white background layer, and you're seeing the pineapple layer. So you can see that the visibility can toggle on or off with the little eyeball next to it. So you could turn on the flower, Hawaii, postage. So all of that is here already. And we are going to get familiar with the layers panel. Most any Photoshop document is going to have more than one layer. So you do need to get comfortable with working with layers. The idea of a layer is basically like you're stacking transparent layers on top of each other, but they might only have content on one section. Like for example, this flower is, the layer is see-through around here, but then on this corner you see the flower. So think of it as like invisible layers of clear paper that you're stacking on top of each other. Individual sheets or layers can be edited, repositioned, and deleted without affecting other sheets. When the sheets are stacked, the entire composition is visible. Many of the lesson files for the book have a background layer, a layer behind all the other layers that is completely opaque. Photoshop documents intended for print, digital cameras, and scanned images typically have a background layer. Photoshop documents created for mobile devices and websites might not have a background layer. For example, website graphics may need to be transparent areas that won't block a web page's background or other elements. So sometimes we need background layers, sometimes we don't. In this case, we have a white one. So we're gonna save this document, file save as, and you can just save it and call it 04 working as a PSD. Okay, so the first task that we're gonna be doing is adding a photo of the beach to our postcard. Now we already talked about the eyeball. Let's talk about the lock. So any of the layers that you have can be locked using the little lock button or unlocked, okay? If you lock a layer, that means that it's not touchable. You can't edit anything on it. You can't even move it. If you turn off a layer, it's still there. It still exists as part of your document. You're just not seeing it right now, okay? So we are going to open up a beach photo and we're going to put it as our background here. So we're going to go File, Open, and this is also going to be in the same Lesson 4 folder that you got the start file from, and it's called beach.psd. So go ahead and open that, and that's going to open in a new document window, and there's several ways we could do this. Basically, we want to get this photo as the background on our 04 working. So the way that they suggest to do it in the book is they want us to change the layer name. So double click on layer 1 over here and call it beach and then press enter. Then they want us to go window, arrange, to up vertical. And what that does is it takes both documents that are open and it places them side by side in your document window. Now, you just have to make sure that beach isn't locked, which it's not. And we're going to get the move tool. V is your shortcut. and you're going to pick up this beach photo and you're going to drag it over to the pineapple and drop it. Okay, so now the beach layer is over here and it's above the pineapple layer on mine. With theirs, they actually want it to be below the pineapple layer. So we're going to click on beach and we're going to drag it down a level to where you see that blue line and then drop it there. Okay, so now that we're done with the original beach, we're just going to go Window, Arrange, and then Consolidate 2 tabs. And we can actually just close out of that beach photo and don't save it. Okay, so we've added beach over here. We're going to turn off the eyeball next to pineapple because we don't want to see it for a minute. And then we're going to select the beach layer. So make sure that in your layers panel, beach is highlighted. And then if you Alt click the eye icon next to the layer you want to see, it will turn off all the other layers except that. Okay, so Alt click. Turns off the white background. Okay, now we are going to add a layer style to this. So I'm just going to kind of center it on the page using the move tool. And then I'm going to go up to layer, layer style, and stroke. So if I drag this over to the side, I can actually see what's going on because the preview box is checked, but it's adding a black line around the outside of this layer. So a stroke outlines something for you, okay? So we are going to make this a white stroke instead of black, and we're going to make the size 5 pixels. Position inside, blend mode normal, opacity 100, that's all good. Now we can change the color to white, and we're going to click OK. So we've got like a little white border, which makes this look more like a Polaroid. So now we're going to play around with the order of our layers, and this is called the stacking order. So if you think about it as transparent sheets that you're stacking, first you have a white sheet, then you have the beach photo, then you're going to have the pineapple. So we're going to actually turn on all these layers so we can see kind of what's going on here. So the beach is almost entirely blocked by images on other layers. So you can actually drag them around. We're going to put the beach layer between the pineapple and the flower layers. So drag it up a level. And then you should have pineapple, then beach, then flower, then Hawaii, and the stand. Okay. Each layer also has settings. And in this particular one, we're going to click on the postage layer. And we don't want it to be that dark, so we're going to change the opacity. So you have opacity and you have fill. Make sure you're changing opacity and drag the slider down to 25%. And then you'll see that that layer has lightened up and looks see-through. Okay, then you're going to do File Save or Control S, Command S on a Mac. Something else you can do that's interesting is duplicate a layer and then change the blending mode. So we're going to try that with the pineapple layer. So blending modes affect how color pixels on one layer blend with pixels on the layers below it or behind it. First, you'll use blending modes to increase the intensity of the image on the pineapple layer so that it doesn't look so dull. Then you'll change the blending mode on the postage layer. So we're going to hide the Hawaii layer, the flower layer, and the beach layer. Toggle those off, and then you're going to right click and right click on the pineapple layer, and it brings up this menu. And then you're going to choose duplicate layer from that menu. And then you're going to click OK. It's fine if it's called pineapple copy. So now we have two layers of the pineapple. And then on the upper layer, so the one that's on top of the bottom one, you're going to change the blend mode. And the blend mode is right up here where it says normal in your layers panel. So click on normal and change that to overlay. And you'll notice a difference with the contrast of the image. So if you toggle that layer on and off, do you see how much contrast that adds by just duplicating that layer and changing the blend mode to overlay? So that's a really good way to get like a pop of color. Then you're going to go to the postage layer, and we already did change its opacity, but now we're going to change the blending mode to multiply. The multiply blending mode multiplies the color values of its layer with those of the underlying layers. Okay, so let's turn all these guys back on. So if you go down to like screen, you'll notice it's way different, but multiply is not that different. Okay, and then so multiply tends to darken its layer, overlay tends to increase contrast, and screen tends to lighten the layer that it's applied to. So let's go ahead and save this. You can do a lot in Photoshop with blending modes. The possibilities are endless. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and turn on all our layers except for the flower. And then we're gonna click on the beach layer. Actually, turn off Hawaii as well. Okay, so we wanna be on the beach layer. And we are going to make it smaller and rotate it. So if you want to manipulate an object on a layer, Control T or Command T on the Mac is a shortcut. You can also go up to Edit, Free Transform. Okay, so that brings up your bounding box that allows you to rotate or to change the width and height of that object. So we are going to scale the photo down to about 50%. So just drag that bounding box down till you see these numbers up here that say about 50%. If it's just doing like squishing your image like this, make sure that this little chain is selected because that's going to keep your aspect ratio the same. It'll scale uniformly. Okay, so take that down to 50% and then you are going to rotate it 15 degrees. You can type it in up here in the rotate box, or you can just drag one of the corners. Okay, then you want to go ahead and click the check mark to commit those changes. And then you can use the move tool and drag the beach photo so that its corner is tucked neatly beneath the flower. So I guess we got to turn the flower back on. There we go. We can see what's going on there. And this is kind of what we want it to look like to give it that postcard vibe. Okay, so we're going to file save. Couple more things here. We're going to get some clouds going in the background. We can actually render clouds in Photoshop without any source files, so we can just make clouds. So we're going to do that. We're going to add an empty layer. So we're going to add a blank sheet of clear film to the stacking of images. And then we're going to make those into clouds. So you're going to start by clicking on your background layer. And you can turn it on so you can see that it's white. So click on your background layer and then click Create a New Layer button, which is the little plus sign. And that just creates a blank layer called Layer 1. We're going to double click on its name and we're going to call it Clouds. And then over here, these two little color swatches are called your foreground color and your background color. So the foreground color is green right now for me, but if I press the D key, it's going to reset it to black and white. Okay, so I'm going to double click on that foreground color and it brings up my color picker. And I have a value for you here that is RGB. So we're going to click on the R. And for the R value, we're going to put in 48. Green is 138. And the blue value is 174. So that's going to give us this nice cloud blue color. Click OK. And then the background color is just going to remain white. If it's not white, you're going to need to double click on it and make sure it's white. Okay. All right. So we have foreground, background color set first. And then we're going to go make sure we're on the clouds layer. We're going to go up to Filter, Render, Clouds. Ta-da! That's pretty good. That's all you gotta do. And you have clouds. Okay, so save that. Okay, go ahead and click on the pineapple copy layer to make it active. And we're gonna add one more image. So I'm gonna go to Finder. So see this flower 2 that's included in your lesson folder? Go ahead and click on that file and drag it onto the Photoshop window. And it should go ahead and put a new layer with that flower on it, right above the pineapple copy layer. And what it does is it places that as a smart object, which is a layer that you can edit without making permanent changes. We'll learn a little bit more about that later, but it's a really cool option. So we're going to go ahead and just position this flower in the bottom left corner of our page, right about there. And when you click the check mark, you'll notice this icon changes to have that little piece of paper on it. That is indicating that it's a smart object. Okay, so go ahead and turn on all your layers, including the Hawaii layer. We are going to add another bit of text right underneath the word Hawaii. So we're going to go up to the select menu and we're going to deselect layers so that no layers are selected. And then we are going to go to the horizontal type tool, which is the T for shortcut. And we're going to open up the character panel. It should be over here with the little A. If you don't see it, you can go up to Window and Character. Okay, so here's where you choose all your font settings. We're going to choose a condensed font. If you have Birch STD, you can use that one. There it is. So Birch STD, we're going to use regular. We're going to do 36 points. The tracking value is the distance between letters, so we're going to make that pretty high. We're going to go 250 on that. Then they want it to be a grassy green color, so you're going to click on that color swatch right there. This is your text color, and it can just be a bold shade of green, like a grassy green. Okay, you don't need it to be faux bold. Or sorry, yeah, actually you do. And then we're going to click on the all caps button as well, which is going to make all the letters capital regardless of the font. And then there's this little AA menu right here that says none. That stands for anti-aliasing. And we're going to put that one on crisp. Just makes your letter edges a bit crisper. Okay, so now that we have all those settings, we're going to click right below the H on Hawaii, and we're going to type Island Paradise. And if you want to scoot it over and center it, just hover right below it and click and drag. Okay, when you're happy with that, you can commit the changes. I am going to select the text, so double click on all of it. And I want it to be a bit brighter of a green so it pops a little better. So I'm going to go with that. And then I'm also going to make it a little bit bigger and more stretched out so that it fits under that word Hawaii. And again, as long as you click off of the text, the move tool should show up and you can position it where you want before you click the check mark. Okay, if you've already clicked the check mark, don't worry, you can get back in here. But okay, so now if I click the check mark, you'll see my text layer appear over here. If I want to get back into it, I just need to use the text tool and click in on that text and it will let me go back and edit it. I just have to highlight all of it if I want to change anything about it. Okay. Okay, next we're going to put a gradient on the word Hawaii. A gradient is where you gradiate from one color to another. So we're going to go from yellow to white. And we're going to click on the Hawaii layer. Right now this is not a text layer. If it was a text layer, you would see the little T next to it, but it's not. So these are just treated as shapes, okay? So you're going to right click on that layer and you're going to choose oh, sorry. You have to do it on the thumbnail. Right click on that layer, thumbnail, and then select pixels. And so you'll see that it creates a selection out of the pixels that are on this layer. And then you're going to use the gradient tool, which is over here. It's G is its shortcut. We're going to change our foreground color to a yellow. It says a bright shade of orange, but you can go with whatever you like. The background color should still be white, which it is. And we're going to make sure that linear gradient is selected, which is this first box here. You also have the option to do radial gradient, angle gradient, reflected gradient, or diamond gradient. Okay, so we're going to go with linear just to try it. And once you have a selection, you can click and drag upward from the bottom to the top of the text, and you should see this gradient fill up those pixels. Now I'm not really happy with my yellow here. It's not bright enough. So I'm going to go and adjust that. And I'm going to do it again. There we go. I prefer to look at the HSB sliders rather than the RGB sliders. They confuse me. So I'm going to go up here and pick like a really bright yellow. See how it's kind of gold before? I don't like that. Okay, I have to go into the gradient to edit it. So let me just show you how I did that. So if you double click on this little gradient swatch over here, then you click once on the gradient. It will bring up this gradient editor, which has the two colors, and you can double click on this little house right here, and then you can change your color. Okay, so if that's how you have to do it after you've already made the gradient. Okay, so once you're done with that, you'll notice that it made a gradient fill layer above the words Hawaii, and you can do Control D to deselect Hawaii. Okay, now we're going to add a layer style. We're going to still be working on the Hawaii layer. So you want to click on that again. And then this is interesting. Okay, then we're going to go up to, make sure you're on Hawaii. We're going to go up to layer, layer style, and drop shadow. So a drop shadow puts a shadow behind the pixels in that layer. You can see if you check the preview box or uncheck it, you can see the difference. So it allows it to like stand out from its background. So you want to have this on multiply. The opacity we're going to put at 75%. The angle is 78 degrees. The distance is 5 pixels. The spread is 30 pixels. And the size is 10 pixels. So the lighting angle controls which direction your shadow is going to go. So if you want it to look like the light source is over here, you would want to change your angle to that. If you want it to look like your light source is from 78 degrees, that's where we're at right now, okay? So go ahead and click OK, and you'll see that adds our drop shadow effect. Okay, we're going to apply that same effect to the Island Paradise layer. So regardless of where your Island Paradise layer is, you can actually copy this drop shadow to that layer. So we're going to hover over Effects under Hawaii, and we're going to Alt or Option click. Sorry, I just messed that up. Yeah, sorry. Alt or Option click and drag that effects layer or that effect to the Island Paradise layer. Okay, so I hold down Alt, I click on Effects, and I drag it up or down to Island Paradise. Okay? Okay, one more thing we're going to do to the word Hawaii. So again, make sure that's selected. We're going to add a layer style. So we added an effect. Now we're going to add another effect called a layer style. So go down to FX in the bottom of your layers panel. And we're going to go with stroke. And remember, stroke is how we got that white outline on the photograph. So that's essentially what we're doing here, but we're going to do a green outline. So our size is going to be 4 pixels. Position is going to be outside. Blend mode, normal, opacity 100, and then the color we're going to use when the color picker comes up. If you go down below to your green text and hover over it, you can use the eyedropper to select that same green color. And then you can click OK. So see how it outlined our letters with that same green? We're going to add a drop shadow to the flower now. So go ahead and click on, let me see which flower layer it is. The pink, the upper flower. So you're going to click on the flower layer. And again, you can go down here to this effects menu, or you can go up to layer, layer style, and drop shadow. Those two menus are the same. I don't know why they call layer styles and effects something different, but they are pretty much the same. Okay, so we are doing a drop shadow on our flower, and the opacity is going to be a little bit less. We're going to set it down to 60. The distance is going to be wider, so 13 pixels. The spread is going to be 9%. And the blend mode should be on multiply. Global light should be selected. Okay, then if you want to apply more than one thing from this menu, the layer style or the effects menu, you can click on the word. So I'm going to click on satin and apply the satin effect as well. And under the satin settings, I want to make sure that under the blend mode, it says invert. Nope. Satin, apply the following settings. Okay, so the color is actually what we're changing. Multiply is the same. So the color is going to be a complementary color. So like that fuchsia purple that's down below, you can make it that color. And then you'll see that it's kind of blending that into the upper flower now. We're going to take our opacity down to 20% though, because we don't want it to be too extreme. And then the spread, the distance can be 22. So what you're doing is you're putting a little bit of that fuchsia from this purple flower down here into this flower up here, and it creates like a satiny finish on top of it too. You can check the invert box and see how different it is. See, so that's why we like the invert setting. Okay, so now when you click OK, it's going to apply both the drop shadow and the satin effect to that upper flower. Now we're going to go to our other flower, flower 2, which is the lower flower, and we're going to add an adjustment to it, a hue saturation adjustment. So we're going to go to our adjustments panel, and we're going to click on hue saturation, and it's going to add an adjustment layer in our layers panel, and we're going to put the following settings. So 43 for the hue. It's going to do this to the sky and the pineapple too, but we'll fix it. Saturation is going to be 19. Lightness is 0. So see how this flower has changed its hue a little bit? So what happened here was it applies this adjustment layer to everything below flower 2. So that includes all of these layers. If we want it to only apply to that layer, we are going to right click on that hue saturation layer, and we're going to go down to create clipping mask, and then it's only clipped to that particular layer, and you can toggle it on and off to see that it only affects that layer. So we've brightened up the pinks in this flower, we've added some of the purples to this flower, and now they look really good. Okay, at this point, if you need to tweak the words Island Paradise at all, you can move those around using the Move tool. Again, if you go back to the Text tool, you can highlight all of it, Control A or Command A, and then you can change your font size if you want it a little bigger, smaller. You just kind of want it to fit inside of the word Hawaii, or like within the bounds, same boundary as that word. You might need to adjust the tracking as well, but once you're done adjusting that, you can click the check mark. Okay, we are almost done here. We're going to get the Move tool, and we're going to select the postage layer. And if you uncheck this auto select box, it's going to keep your Move tool stuck to whatever layer you're on over here. So it won't move anything else except that. So let's pick up that postage layer, and we're going to drag it to the middle right of the image so that it's actually starting to look like a postcard. Okay, then we're going to select the Island Paradise text layer. And we're going to create a new layer above that at the bottom of the layers panel. And then we're going to go up to the select menu, select all. So that selects the entire postcard. And then we're going to go, this is on a new layer, okay? We're going to go up to select, modify border. And we're going to make a border around the entire thing that's 10 pixels and click OK. Now it hasn't been filled with anything, so we're going to fill it with white. We're going to swap our foreground background color so we can make white the foreground, and you can use a keyboard shortcut for that, X. So make your foreground color white, and then you're going to go up to Edit and Fill, and then you're going to fill it with white or fill it with the foreground color, either one is fine. And then you're going to click OK. So now notice that 10 pix border has a background of white. You're going to Control D or Command D on a Mac, and then you're going to rename this layer border by double clicking on it. Okay, so our postcard is done. We can see that it's going to be a rather large file, and the reason I know that is because of all these layers over here. You can also click down here and see your width, height, and resolution. Some of you might be able to see the document size, but this document, if you let me see if I can get that. I don't know where that is. But if you flatten this image, it's going to be a lot smaller, and so it'll be easier to work with. So you're going to save just to make sure that all of your changes have been saved into your PSD. And then we're going to go up to Image and Duplicate, which is going to duplicate our PSD, but this one we're going to call 04 flat. .psd. And when we duplicate this, our second one is going to be flattened. So we're going to go up to the layers panel right here. In the top right, there's the 4 little bars, and you're going to click on that. And then you're going to go to flatten image. And it's going to combine all of those layers into one, which means that they're not editable anymore. We only have one background layer. And then from there, we're going to export as a JPEG. Okay, so I want you to just upload the flat JPEG today because it's going to be a lot smaller file size. You don't have to upload your PSD for this lesson.